Va, iba, fue. How are these all the same verb? Ir is probably the most irregular verb in Spanish, and there are over 50 conjugations to memorize. But the good news is that there are just 10 forms that native speakers use to say just about everything they need to say. In this video, we'll do a deep dive on those essential 10 forms of Ir. We'll practice a bunch of different ways to use them, including a hack for using Ir to put Spanish verbs in the future. And we'll also use a bunch of active quizzes so that you can start using all of this right away. Before we dive in, let's just start with a list of the top 10 forms of Ir. These words come from a frequency analysis of Spanish spoken by native Spanish speakers. According to this analysis, although native Spanish speakers do use all 50 forms of Ir, these top 10 most used forms account for almost 80% of all real-life uses of the verb. These top 10 forms include 5 present tense forms, 2 past tense forms, 1 subjunctive form, the infinitive, and the imperative. Let's dive in and practice using all of these. We'll start with the present tense, and these are 5 forms that you might already know. Voy means go, as in I go. Va means goes, as in he goes or she goes. Vas means go, as in you go. Van is go, as in they go. And vamos is go, as in we go. So as a simple example, I go to work at 8. This would be voy al trabajo a las 8. We can change this to they go by switching out voy for van. So they go to work at 9. Van al trabajo a las 9. So this is pretty straightforward. The Spanish and English in these examples are pretty similar. But in Spanish, these words are used in even more situations to describe something that's currently happening. For example, check out this one. We are going home now. Vamos a casa ahora. So the word vamos literally means we go. So the literal translation is we go home now. This is strange to English speakers. We don't usually say we go home now. We instead say we are going home now. But in Spanish, most of the time, we go and we are going is simply translated as vamos. Here's another example. They are going to the party tonight. Van a la fiesta esta noche. So here we're describing something that's happening in the future. And once again, in English, we say they are going, but in Spanish, we say they go. Let's practice these uses of all of these present tense forms of Ir. So I'm going to give you an English sentence, and you should see if you can predict which form of Ir to use. First example, we go to those parties sometimes. Vamos a esas fiestas a veces. Next, she is going home now. Ella va a casa ahora. They go to work early. Ellos van al trabajo temprano. I'm going to her house tonight. Voy a su casa esta noche. Do you go to her events? ¿Vas a sus eventos? Next, let's talk about the most common past tense form, fue. We use fue to say that someone went somewhere at some point in the past. So for example, he went to their house. Él fue a su casa. She went to the beach. Ella fue a la playa. The dog went home. El perro fue a casa. Now this form, fue, only covers the third person singular. So it's used for he went, or she went, or it went. There are, of course, other forms for other persons, but they don't make the top 10. So let's go ahead and move on to some other forms of Ir. Our next form to work on is the infinitive, Ir. This is what we call an unconjugated form, which means it doesn't change based on who it's referring to. The simplest way to practice this is with the verb querer, which means to want. So if we want to say, I want to go, we'll say, yo quiero ir. Now let's change the person. How about we want to say, they want to go? So in that case, we would say, ellos quieren ir. And then to say we want to go, we would say, nosotros queremos ir. In each case, the word ir stays the same. It's not conjugated. Next, let's look at the subjunctive conjugation, vaya. Why does this subjunctive form make it to the top 10? Well, it's actually really important. In Spanish, anytime someone wants someone else to go somewhere, you have to use the subjunctive. Here's the most simple example. Once again, we're using the verb querer, and here we're going to say, I want him to go there. Quiero que él vaya allí. This is literally, I want that he go there. If you find this confusing, you can dive into this sentence structure in some of our other videos about subjunctives. But the basic formula is we use querer, and then que, and then a subjunctive. Here's another example. He wants me to go home. Quiere que yo vaya a casa. So the word vaya, which is a subjunctive of ir, can refer to either I go or he or she go. Two more examples. Quieren que ella vaya a la fiesta. ¿Quieres que yo vaya a tu casa? It's interesting to point out that you could change each of these to use the infinitive ir instead of the subjunctive, but it would change the meaning. Compare these two sentences. Quieren que ella vaya a la fiesta. Quieren ir a la fiesta. So in the first case, they want her to go somewhere, but in the second one, they want it for themselves. Whenever someone wants to go somewhere, you'll use the infinitive ir. But if you want someone else to go somewhere, you'll need que and a subjunctive. Let's get a little practice with this. For each of these sentences, try to predict whether you'll use ir or que and vaya. First, I want to go home. Quiero ir a casa. I want her to go home. Quiero que ella vaya a casa. Literally, I want that she go home. They want me to go to the restaurant. Quieren que yo vaya al restaurante. They want to go to the restaurant. Quieren ir al restaurante. Now let's move on to imperatives, which are commands. This is how you tell someone to go somewhere. The simplest version is ve. For example, go with him to the party. Ve con él a la fiesta. But how often are you actually going to use this? So imperatives and commands can easily feel forceful, sometimes even rude. But if you're talking to someone you know really well and you feel comfortable enough to tell them to go somewhere, you can use ve. Here's another example. Go to that new cafe tomorrow. Ve a ese nuevo café mañana. Now, I don't want you to go out there and start brusquely telling people to go places after watching this video. So let's actually learn two other imperatives that are useful for less forceful situations. For example, you might need to give someone directions. Let's say that you're in Mexico City and you're walking down the street with a fresh cup of coffee. And then a sweet elderly lady walks up to you, she sees you with the coffee, and she asks you where you got it because she wants some too. The coffee shop is just 2 blocks away, so you know she just needs to go to the left and then to the right. So if you were speaking English, you could simply say, go to the left and then go to the right. But in Spanish, in this particular situation, you probably won't use ve. Remember that in Spanish, you'll sometimes use the informal you, tú, and sometimes you'll use the formal you, usted. In this situation, since you're talking to an older person that you don't know, you're probably going to use usted. And the imperative for ir, to say go in an usted voice, is vaya. Wait a minute, wasn't vaya the subjunctive that we learned? Well, yes, but it's also an imperative to say go in an usted voice. So here's the sentence you might say to this lady. Go to the left and then go to the right. Vaya a la izquierda y luego vaya a la derecha. And then the last imperative that we need to learn is the form for let's go. You'll use this one when you want to include yourself in the command. For example, let's go to the party. Or let's go to that new cafe tomorrow. In Spanish, the let's go form of ir is vamos. And yes, in this case, it's the same as the word for we go, but for ir, it also means let's go. For example, let's go to the party. Vamos a la fiesta. Let's go to that new cafe tomorrow. Vamos a ese nuevo café mañana. And by the way, for some deeper practice on how to say let's in Spanish, check out our other video on this topic where we go deep into it. Now let's talk about the future. The most common way to put ir in the future tense is with a 3-part structure. First, choose a form of ir, then use the word a, and then use the infinitive ir. Wait, are we really using ir twice in these sentences? It's actually pretty simple, and we even do the exact same thing in English. So check out this sentence. We are going to go there. In this sentence, you can see that I'm mentioning going twice, but that's because I'm using the phrase we are going to put the verb go in the future. I can even do the same thing with other verbs. For example, we're going to do something. In this example, we're not going anywhere. We're just using the term going to put do in the future. So let's practice this. Here are all the present tense forms of ir, which we talked about earlier. If we just put the preposition a after any of these, we can use it to put any verb we want in the future. So for example, we are going to go home. Vamos a ir a casa. Or maybe, I am going to go to my house. Voy a ir a mi casa. So how do you think you would say this? She is going to go to the beach tomorrow. Va a ir a la playa mañana. And the great thing about this structure is that just like in English, you can actually do this with any verb in Spanish to put it in the future. Let's say you want to say, they are going to do that tomorrow. The word for to do is hacer. So this would be, van a hacer eso mañana. Time for some practice. For each of these sentences, try to choose the appropriate version of ir from the chart on the left, and then use a, and then use either ir or hacer. First, you are going to do that. ¿Vas a hacer eso? I am going to go to Spain. Voy a ir a España. She is going to go to bed soon. Va a ir a cama pronto. We are going to do something else. Vamos a hacer algo más. All right, our last form of ir is the word iba. This word is used to say was going, as in she was going home. Ella iba a casa. This is a past tense form like fue, but fue is used to emphasize that something is a one-time event rather than an ongoing activity. Compare these two sentences both in English and in Spanish. She went home. Ella fue a casa. Versus she was going home. Ella iba a casa. Technically speaking, this is the difference between the imperfect past tense and the preterite past tense. And if you want to dive into this deeper, subscribe to this channel for an upcoming video on the two different past tenses in Spanish. But there's actually another reason that iba is so common. Check out this sentence in English. She was going to do that. So where is she going in this sentence? She's not going anywhere. Instead, we're using was going to put the verb to do in the future. So it's just like this sentence. She is going to do that. Ella va a hacer eso. We talked about this earlier in the video, using ir to put another verb in the future. Well, we can use iba to put another verb in the future of the past. Instead of she is going to do that, we say she was going to do that. Ella iba a hacer eso. Try this yourself with a couple of sentences. The man was going to do that. El hombre iba a hacer eso. My friend was going to go to the party. Mi amiga iba a ir a la fiesta. Ready to get even better at these conjugations of ir? We have a set of 40 flashcards that you can download for free with even more examples that you can practice with. Click the link in the description for flashcards with all the sentence examples we covered in this video and more. These flashcards will help you use all top 10 conjugations of ir in a wide variety of ways. And then for some fun ways to use flashcards like these, you'll want to check out our videos about practicing with Spanish flashcards. Just subscribe to this channel and you'll get more grammar and study tips that'll get you speaking Spanish fluently faster than ever.